What's going on, fellow simmers? This is Captain Gonzo with that Flight Sim channel once again, bringing you back the beautiful Black Square Simulations TBM850. Now, for those of you who may be following us, and maybe for those of you who are new, we've developed a series of tutorials on this aircraft, and this is going to be either the second or third part of the series. The first one included the startup from a cold and dark environment, and it included some taxi out and a takeoff, with some very minimal references to certain speeds and stuff like that we look at on the ascent. Now, on this part of the video, as you can see, we are over some water. Now, on that first series, we were taking off out of San Juan Luis Obispo Airport out in California, and today I decided to change the scenery a little bit and picked up the video elsewhere. So we are flying down from Naples, Florida, down to the world famous Key West International Airport. Now, as we can see, we are about 53.8 nautical miles from Key West on a direct GPS route, and in this series of the video we'll be covering the descent, approach, and landing, and possibly leaving the shutdown as one part. Maybe we could split them up into a few parts. We'll see how the editing goes, how long the videos are, and that will ultimately determine what we do with the video. However, right now, as you can see, we are established at 18,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and unpause the sim. There we go. So we're cruising along at 18,000 feet, and we are using the autopilot. Now, I'm going to make a side note here, guys. We are going to have a separate tutorial for the autopilot system here on the TBM. And as you can see up here, we've got that full mode control panel for the autopilot. Now, to be honest, guys, it is not that difficult to operate the autopilot on this aircraft. It's pretty straightforward. Well, I'm going to let Captain Flaco take on the autopilot tutorial on this aircraft. He did it for the COWS DA42, which we covered in our previous series of tutorials. And so right now, again, I'll be focusing on the cruise, descent, approach, landing, and on the shutdown as well. So this part of the video will pick up here shortly when we begin our descent. So just stay tuned. I'll be referencing the Black Square's TBM850 checklist and the manual that is included with the aircraft. So stay true to that, guys. Okay, guys, as you can see here in the video, we've began the descent. We're about 29 nautical miles to the north of Key West International Airport, and today we'll be looking at where the winds are coming out of. We'll take a look at that here shortly in the next segment of the video. But right now, let's go ahead and let's go reference that descent checklist. Altimeters set to 2935, which is the local. Cabin altitude, it wants us to set it to the field elevation plus 500 feet. But right now, we'll continue to bring this wheel down according to our altitude as we decrease in altitude. Pulse lights on. We'll wait till we cross below 10,000 feet and we'll turn our landing lights on. De-icing systems as required. Inertial separator as required. Airflow distributor as required. Ignition on, again, if heavy precipitation is present. We're not expecting that, but if we do, we'll go ahead and turn that ignition on, which can be found up here on the engine start overhead panel section. Fuel quantity and balance. Let's go ahead and check. Yep, looks like a good balanced fuel load. And for those of you that may not know, right here the fuel selector will actually automatically switch it over for you. So if you leave this fuel selector on auto, the aircraft will be doing everything for you automatically, so you don't have to worry about switching the tanks. And lastly, on the descent checklist, auto fuel selector, shift to the fullest, and again, we're going to leave that on auto right now. We're also going to leave the auxiliary boost pump on the auto position, and let the aircraft manage that. So that covers the descent checklist. So let's continue here. And as you can see, we are using the autopilot for this segment. I will be taking manual controls of the aircraft here shortly once we get below, let's say 8,000 feet, 7,000 feet. But for now, just to do a quick reference, we are in vertical speed mode. And as you can see, I am adjusting my vertical speed descent here. And it will be displayed here on your altitude set panel. And you can see you have your vertical speed engaged as indicated here, and we are looking to come down to about 2,100 feet, which at that point will be in manual controls. But right now we're on nav mode according to the GPS here, so we're just following that magenta line straight down. And again, once we get closer to the airport, I will begin taking controls of the aircraft and set us up for a nice approach. Alright, guys, so here we are beginning our approach into Key West International Airport. We're at about 2,100 feet right now, and what we're doing is we're using an RNAV approach, which is an area navigation, right, or otherwise known as the GPS approach. And as you can see, we've got a series of waypoints that are going to set us up for a nice final into runway 9 into Key West. Now again, this is not going to cover a full demo of how to use the GTN 750 or the autopilot for a full landing. Right now, I'm still on the autopilot, just helping us maintain 2,000 feet or so until we get closer. So let's go ahead and start referencing our approach checklist, or the before landing. So cabin lights are off. Altimeters checked and set to 2935. 2935 as well. So we've got good altimeters. Decision height has been set to 200 feet AGL, above ground level. Fuel quantity and balance has been checked. Plenty of fuel. Inertial separator. It wants us to have the inertial separator on underneath 200 knots. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the inertial separator right there. Landing gear down under 178 knots. We'll wait for that. Flaps set to the approach setting under 178 knots. Landing lights as required. They are on, and we've got the pulsating system, as you can see right here. They are flickering on and off. Autopilot disconnect. We'll press it once we're ready to take over the aircraft, and the flaps will be full under 122 knots. So that does it for our before landing checklist. And pretty quickly here, I'm just going to go ahead and read through the actual landing checklist because it's pretty short. And it wants us to set the power lever to idle as we begin to transition over the runway there to land. Reverse thrust as required, and braking as required. Okay, so that does it for the checklist. So the airport right now is off somewhere toward 10 o'clock over there, a few miles out. As you can see, we see land. And again, we're just following this RNAV approach until we establish on a nice long final. Alright guys, so here we are approaching ATNA, and I have taken manual control over the aircraft. So at this stage, let's go ahead and get flaps down to the approach setting. We are underneath 178 knots. Now let's start scanning for that runway. I believe I have it in sight there. And right now we're inside that flaps extended operating range if we wanted to go full flaps. And again guys, the airspeed indicator here, look at that white arc. The top of that white arc shows you your top airspeed where you want to be with full flaps extended. Now in this case, we are well underneath that. We're holding at about 110 knots. And again, the maximum speed you want to be at with flaps extended is 122 knots. So let's go ahead and get gear down here. Let's see where we're at in relation to the runway. Okay, we overshot the runway, so let's come ahead and correct that a bit. Gear is in transit, waiting for the 3 green. There we go, 3 green, gear down and locked. Let's go ahead and bring that altitude down a bit. We climbed here about 1,000 feet. As you can see, those flaps come down, and that aircraft is going to want to climb on you guys. But we are over a lot of water here in the Atlantic and Caribbean Ocean, so you want to obviously stay a little bit high if you need to. Okay, I've got the runway made just ahead there. And just for references, the airport elevation here at Key West is 3 feet above sea level, so pretty much zero. So we're looking at a decision height of about 200 feet here. And you can already see, look where my nose is pointed at, guys. So we're tracking pretty much off the center of the runway here. You can see those northerly winds trying to push us off center. So we're going to have to adjust for that here. So let's go ahead and just keep coming down on altitude. I'm going to wait till we fall underneath the white arc here for the flaps extended, or VFE. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw those last notch of flaps. So let's start correcting here. There we go. We're about 110 knots. Let's go ahead and get that last notch of flaps in. And again, look at that nose, guys. Just wants to come right back up. So before we land here, let's take a look, make sure our landing lights are on. They are on the pulsating system. Let's get our taxi light on, which is on that nose gear. Let's go ahead and begin arresting this descent a little bit here. Get on the power again. Wow, this is going to be crazy, guys. Look at this crab angle. This is going to be wild. But as I've mentioned before in other videos, you guys just get to watch me, make fun of me, and enjoy this part of the landing. Once again, let's verify 3 green. Landing lights, or the landing gear, excuse me. We got 3 green. We've got that prop handle all the way forward. Make sure all the way forward, just in case we got to execute a go around. Let's see if we can do this, guys. Wow, this is insane. I should have chosen some better weather for the tutorial, but you know what? This is a challenge, so let's make it fun. And again, just referencing that landing checklist, it wants us to set the power to idle, get on the brakes as required, and use that reverse thrust as needed.
500.
Oh boy. Well, those folks out there on the Carnival or Norwegian, whatever cruise line that is, they're in for a heck of a treat right now. And again, guys, you can see I'm going to have to correct with my rudder so I can set that nose down the runway, and I'm going to have to introduce the left bank. Let's watch our airspeed here. A little slow. And here we go, guys. Moment of truth. Wow. Okay, here comes the right rudder. Power coming to idle. Let's get that bank in. There we have it, touchdown. Pretty ugly landing if you guys ask me, but you know what, we made it down safely. And it was challenging to say the least. Let's get back on that center line now. Let's go ahead and vacate the runway here. And you know what, let's go ahead and taxi over to signature here. Go ahead and start taking these landing lights off. We don't want to be blinding people. Turn off the pulsating system. Let's clean the flaps up. Let's go ahead and set that prop lever down a bit since we're taxiing here. Looks like we got some airline traffic here today. Let's see if we can find a marshaller. If not, we'll just go ahead and park ourselves. Looks like we got some ramp workers here standing by with a GPU, but we will not be using it today. Looks like we've got American Airlines catering or servicing there, just blocking our ramp, which is awesome. That's always what we want to see, right? So we've got a lot of ramp workers, guys. Look at that. And they're just hanging out, having a blast over there on the grass. So you know what? I don't want to bother them too much. I'm just going to take care of my own parking. Let's go ahead and come in towards the terminal here. Let's turn off our strobe, make sure we're not blinding people, and we're going to turn the aircraft around here. Get on that brake, on the right brake. There we go. That's about as crappy of a job that I can do. But anyways, let's go ahead and begin the shutdown sequence here, shall we? So first things first, parking brake coming on. Let's go ahead and turn off our pitot heats. We don't need those anymore. Turn off our inertial separator. Clear the master cautions. Let's go ahead and dump that fuel back to the cutoff. GSX here asking me if I want services. Nope, I'm good for now. Let's go ahead and turn off ignition to off. Let's turn off our taxi light. Turn off our nav light. Let's go ahead and kill power to our gyro, RMI, ADI, and our HSI. We'll turn off the EFI, or the IFIS, sorry, the Electronic Flight Instrument System. We'll go ahead and set our fuel selector to manual again. We'll turn the auxiliary boost pump to off. We'll set our altitude here, a reporting mode on the transponder to standby. Turn off our bleed. Get our fan for the air condition off. Let's set that fan flow to off or low. Let's bring that prop lever all the way back. Let's go ahead and open the door. There we go, get some nice tropical winds in here. Let's go ahead and set our autopilot and trims master switch to off. Radio stack going to off. Lastly, guys, we're going to kill that generator and shut the battery off and throw our crash bar back on. And there you go, guys. We have made it down to Key West. As you can see, that landing was not pretty at all, but you know what? I am happy with it. With 30-something knot crosswinds, I will take that any day. I touched down with my left main first, which was the intended purpose, and you guys saw the crabbing angle. But for now, this will cover the TBM850 cruise to descent, approach, and landing series, guys. And again, stay tuned because Captain Flacco will be publishing the autopilot tutorial for this aircraft, so you guys can really hone in on your skills and get better at cruising with the aircraft. This aircraft is tons of fun to fly. I think it is miles ahead of the default TBM930, and I know you guys could probably prefer the Garmin suite of electronic flight displays, but I am a sucker for old school steam gauges and some hybrid setups here with some digital and analog gauges. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. This is Captain Gonzo with that Flight Sim channel, and as always, happy flying.